Hello guys, Looted Host here. I feel like last time I didn't talk a lot about Age of Charlemagne. I probably should have. I feel like I'll make a dedicated video to it, but I don't have Vegas Pro downloaded on my laptop yet. As you guys might know, I have a new one. I just wanted to quickly talk about Age of Charlemagne. I know nobody watches these, but I wanted to make a video about this first, and then I'll probably make a more specific one later on. So essentially, Age of Charlemagne happens after the events of the last Roman. I think about 250 years after. Basically, the setting is like a bit after the Dark Ages, but it's I can't remember the time period. I think it's the like early Middle Ages. I think that's the time period because the starting year is 768 AD. So yeah, that's around the early Middle Ages, like right before knights became a thing. Um, Age of Charlemagne to me was what really made me want to buy the game. That's why I'm very passionate about the DLC. But yeah, I will have to make a specific video on it. I think one thing I liked about Age of Charlemagne is the fact that when I was playing it, it was a challenge, but it was also a balanced game. Like with the base game, your biggest problem is the fact that you like shock cav are dominant. Um, Let me just pick up a random shock cav, well, except for Maxim, of course. Not the Sassanids, that's too specific. Let's go with the Ostrogoths. They have some shock cav. Now, Gothic Lancers have 215. Noble Gothic Lancers have 217. That's just two more. But why shock cav are overpowered is because they have over 200 in the first place. That equates to, say, 225 weapon damage, 225 attack for 30 seconds. And yet, in those 30 seconds, they can pretty much obliterate anything. Because health for low and mid tier units is relatively low, except if you're playing as the Romans, where it isn't, and they have solid armor and they could survive it, but then even in a prolonged fight, it wouldn't matter anyway. So, that's just for the base game, for one faction, but it's kind of universal for any faction in the game that has shock cap because there is no specific unit that has less than 200 charge. Even with the Huns, who have maybe like the second worst lancers in the game, it's debatable. 201 charge. Doesn't matter how you see it. There's other stats are horrible. They have 200 health, 10 armor, but they can still pack a really big punch in those 30 seconds. Let's go over to Age of Charlemagne, and it's a bit different. The Avars, who rely on shock cav as they have no melee cav, have 107 charge bonus. They can still do a lot of damage, of course. Like, they can still one hit, like, models, but it's a lot less likely for, like, that to, like, wipe out an entire unit and if they're braced and they're a spear unit and they have good melee defense and armor. In that case, they're much less likely to. Like, they only have 4 armor piercing damage, but of course, I think it's because, like, they have swords, and so they use that in melee combat. It's just that they don't have any defense. Even I don't know why they have 40 weapon damage. But I mean, it doesn't matter because in any case, they can't consistently one hit every unit, as where in the base game it actually is possible to one hit units. Anyway, what I like is the diversity of the factions. My least favorite faction probably would be the Lombards. My favorite would be Charlemagne. The Lombards, why I'm not a big fan of them is because even though they have clubs, they have swords, they have axes, skirmishers, and they have shock cav. The biggest problem with the Lombards between with every other faction is the fact that they're not really good as sword as a civilized faction when it comes to holding power. Like usually you'd expect the barbaric factions like the Danes, the Avars, the and well actually sorry, Danes, Avars, Mercia and Westphalia, you'd expect them to be more aggressive. And then with the Lombards, Charlemagne, and Asturias, you'd expect them to be more defensive. But that isn't really the case in this scenario because they have a charge bonus of 37, which isn't common with any other faction. So what ends up happening is a unit, if this unit charges into a unit of armored swordsmen and shield wall, they'll lose for obviously. But and I think if the opposite happens, it would also be true. But what ends up happening is that, say you're trying to tank multiple people, they have the same armor as other armored units, other armored swordsmen rather. But where they lag is their base melee defense. They have 49, and with shield wall, that would go up to 64, around 64. That's a lot lower than the, like say Charlemagne or Asturias, where when they go into shield wall, it goes up to 77. Goes up to 77. This 77 melee defense seems like it's overkill, but it actually isn't when you're dealing with other sword units or other like axe units. Even though axe units don't have the bonus versus infantry in the Age of Charlemagne. It's also really useful when you're dealing with like good high tier melee cav and like a lot of it, which usually you probably deal with in a legendary campaign or maybe even in multiplayer. But that defense really comes in handy. Of course, when it comes to missiles, it doesn't matter, but to me, I feel that the Lombards lack in defensive staying power. And when it comes to the offense, yeah, they can do a lot of things that the other civilized factions can't do. They have clubmen which are more efficient in dealing with unarmored units than, like, say, a spear is, but I still believe that a sword will do much more damage over time. Like, if you were to put up the clubmen against a sword unit, like, say, the swordsmen, even though the swordsmen have, like, much less attack, and the clubmen still retain their 10 bonus versus infantry, I'm still pretty sure the clubmen would lose. I'm not going to test it out now, but I'm pretty sure. It's just because of the fact that they still maintain low weapon damage. If the bonus versus infantry also goes to weapon damage like charge bonus does, it would still take like 4 hits from a club to at least 4 hits from a club to kill them. Whereas with a sword it would be 3. Technically 2.5, but you get the point. Like with a sword it's just a lot stronger. I think like the faction traits also kind of help with the overall experience. Like I know that's kind of cliche because all factions have faction traits, but look at the Danes. The Danes in multiplayer are garbage, but in the campaign, there's immune. They're them being immune to seasickness and high seas attrition becomes really useful. But when it comes to Age of Charlemagne, a lot of um, these traits are more unique. I think before an update, the Danes had just these three: seasickness, high seas attrition, and income. Then they got this later on. What else? Westphalia probably has like the worst, because the Danes have slightly worse income from sacking, looting, and raiding. But I mean, I never raid, so it doesn't matter to me. Anyway, sorry about that. Just had to quickly do something. I think the most interesting in terms of like replayability would be Charlemagne. But Charlemagne's too balanced, and his starting position is so difficult because you keep on getting raided, and then war weariness, and then if you're not into finishing campaigns, you'll definitely not. You probably won't even finish Charlemagne. But for me, I just like to finish all of them, and I did already. I've done every Attila campaign, which is kind of weird, honestly. One thing I really wish, like, or maybe don't understand, is the Umayyads have, or the Emirate of Cordoba has a mace. The guy has a mace, but none of the units have maces. At least as I know, it's kind of odd, but whatever. In terms of like the game itself, or the DLC rather, I think that it's a good one. I think it's better than the base game. I'll say it that much. Because even though there's 8 factions, the game is balanced. I'm not complaining about Shock Cav being this, or you know like, I wouldn't say that it turns the game into an infantry focused thing. I think it's more armor focused. Like the units with armor are the ones that, do the most killing and dying, and they're the ones that you want to have in your setup. And then the ones that aren't armored, they're the ones that support them. And that's just true for every faction. The Avars, Emirate of Cordova, Danes, Mercia, doesn't matter. Like it's just that you want the armor. Yeah, Cav are still good, but they're not overpowered as they are in the base game. Like there's less of a focus on cavalry and there's more of a focus on armor. If you have good armor, you should be fine. If you don't, then you might run into problems. I think the least armored faction would probably be the Avars, but that's a stretch. Like their best sword unit has armor, but it's their only sword unit. And then the tribesmen. Oh, the tribesmen do have armor. My bad. I thought they had less. Okay, so that's fine. So it doesn't matter. It's just that they can't block missiles because they have bows. One thing to mention also is that their archers have less range, slightly less range, but better missile damage than any other faction. I think if you're smart, you'd remember that. Just kind of like how the Huns are, where they have better missile damage, even though they're like super cheap. You don't have to rely on bringing like Avar horse archers if you don't want to. Although I still think they're a good idea. Their heavier bow cav can always get caught out of position, so something I'd pay attention to. What else was I gonna say? Yeah, I'll have to make a dedicated video to this and not just me rambling because I know people don't watch it, so it doesn't matter. But I'm going to have to make a dedicated video because I even just remembered that I didn't even finish my Age of Charlemagne. No, my reviews for Rome 2, which I'll probably talk about in a future video. Today I'm not going to do much because there's nothing much to do. Uh, Probably my next video will be talking about the Last Roman. I think that the Last Roman is also a good DLC. The factions that came with it are unique. But Age of Charlemagne really was what made me buy Attila, and that's why I wanted to talk about it today. So, pretty sure there's nothing going on here. Oh, well, this is interesting. It's a Attila campaign. Might as well just join it. Why not? I have nothing to lose. I honestly have nothing to lose. I was just gonna end the stream here because I have nothing else to do. I need to make a dedicated video on. I need to make a dedicated video on Rome 2, Attila, maybe some other stuff, instead of just rambling. Maybe AFK. I don't blame him. I think probably the most fun I had with the faction of the campaign, though I'm just going off topic, but I think the most fun I've had with a campaign was the Tanukids. I was gonna say the Western Roman Empire, but once you like understand how they work and the fact that you have to lose some territories and then regain them back later on, like the Western Roman Empire is good, but they just like they you can tank early on if you play the game right. If you're facing the Huns, yeah, you'll run into problems, but if you bring them into your cities and then tank those in fights, then you'll do really well, I feel. think the worst one has always been the Danes. Actually, no. I apologize. The worst one was the Garamantians. That campaign was so bad. I still have it too. Use AFK, so it doesn't matter. I'm just gonna see if I can bring it up real quick. Like, I know the Venetians took longer, but that was my fault. The Garamantian campaign, though, was such a doozy. Like, you have a bad start, even though the campaign is easy and you can choose to who you want to fight. It's when you, like, expand, like, that's when, because you fight, you have so many public order penalties from the fact that there's different religions in the surrounding areas. So if you don't, like, say, change your religion, what will end up happening is you'll run into a lot of problems with the Romans because of the fact that they're just Latin or they're Greek, and if you try to do both, that's just a double whammy. I don't think that's what I did, but I ended up just speed running the campaign. I couldn't bother. Just buying a bunch of units. I ended up having a lot of problems over here. But yeah, it took me like a while to like consolidate my power here. I think I've always been allied to the Gaetulians. I can check the trade to confirm that. Long-term partnership. That's odd. Maybe we weren't always trading with them, but I know like we were allies since the beginning. But this campaign was such a doozy. I had to assimilate so many factions, including the Swabians, who like really like they were hard. Did I fight the Huns? I don't even think I fought the Huns at all. I don't think so. They're still here. I think what happened was the Attila ended up dying somewhere in yeah, we never fought them. We never fought them. Attila ended up dying somewhere here. I think it was fighting the Sassanids, who ended up being beaten. Yeah, we ended up pushing them back, and then they ended up losing a lot of territories to the Huns. But yeah, like, this was the only campaign where, like, I never fought Attila directly, and he ended up dying. But yeah, that was the worst. Stuff like this never happened when I was playing Age of Charlemagne. Like the longest one was my first campaign with Age of Charlemagne, which was the Kingdom of Charlemagne. Let me see if I can bring it up. I just saw it there, but I want to see if I have one that's longer. Maybe this is it. Maybe it is it. Most likely. This campaign that you see here was on hard. Unfortunately, the Creative Assembly didn't update their lease on the Chronicles site, so I can't actually show you guys the Chronicles. I'm going to quickly check to see if they did. Nope, they did not, so fortunately the Chronicles are lost forever. But basically, this campaign took a while, lost like a couple of territories. I don't even know if I made it all back. No, I didn't. Our friends here, the Kingdom of Brittany, I think they ended up invading us and we never really got to fight back. I never upgraded my archers. Oh, I know why I never did. There ended up being a glitch where you couldn't recruit the mounted archers, and so somebody had to like mod it so that you could, because you should be able to recruit mounted archers, but for some reason they didn't like implement it into the files. It's not that it's a glitch or anything. Like they're literally not there. I think that's what the modder said. But yeah, this campaign took 140 turns for me to complete or get to Imperium 5. And like I did pretty bad. But I liked this campaign even though it took me a while because it was fun. And not only fun, it was balanced. I think I lost what's his face? Pepin died. Yeah, you died. Ronald, I think, died, but he wasn't part of our family, so it didn't matter. I ended up keeping my School of Knights, I think. But yeah, this campaign was fun. So all in all, the between the DLC Age of Charlemagne and the base game Total War Attila, I think Age of Charlemagne could have been a standalone because Fall of the Samurai was a standalone. It wasn't like an add-on. Well, like um, the game Fall of the Samurai was good enough to be on its own. I think Age of Charlemagne was the same thing. But look at what happened. Eventually, Thrones of Britannia was a standalone, but it's a Sega game, and now Fall of the Samurai is also a Sega game. So, of course, Age of Charlemagne won't be a standalone because it's a DLC, but it's kind of the same thing. Like I think like saying Rise of the Samurai would be a standalone is a stretch, but who knows? In any case, I feel that Age of Charlemagne really kind of kind of helped the game, but the base game itself was still damaged, and then it kind of died off with the Slavs. So all in all, Age of Charlemagne really did Attila some justice. It brought in more people, including myself. It definitely helped the game regain some lost player base because of Shotcav. It like was it was really well put together. Like I think Thrones of Britannia. I haven't played Thrones of Britannia, mind you, but I think like Thrones of Britannia just took a lot from Age of Charlemagne, and then they had to streamline it so that people can get into the Total War scene a lot easier than if you were to play Attila, where there's more specific mechanics in the campaign. Because even though there's new stuff in Thrones of Britannia, like though some of them was implemented with Age of Charlemagne, like war weariness. But something new for Thrones of Britannia was like the estates and like other things like I don't know what else it is, but there's something in Thrones of Britannia that's like war weariness that each specific culture has to deal with. I'll probably buy Thrones of Britannia like in a year or two. I don't think I'll buy it now. It's not 75% off. It's like 66. Even Warhammer 266. I'm waiting for it to be 75 and then I'll buy it. But yeah, that's pretty much it, honestly. Like, I know I've been rambling about Age of Charlemagne, but truly it is a game that I feel would be worth having its own scene, and I guess we kind of got that with Thrones of Britannia, but I didn't buy Thrones of Britannia outright just because of the negative reviews it got from the people that got it early on about how streamlined it was. Like, I think if you're going to play these games, any Total War game, really, or at least the ones that I own, if you're going to play them for single player, then that's fine. It's when it comes to multiplayer that it becomes an issue. Like for example, shock have isn't a big issue in the campaign because there are ways that you can deal with them because the AI is very straightforward, and once you recognize the AI's patterns, then you can counter them. Then you realize that there are ways to counter shock cav, even though it is difficult, mind you. So it's important to always, if you're going to buy a Total War game, let's say, it's always important to remember that there's a good possibility that when you get it, most of the time you'll be spending on the game. It'll be in single player. That's what I came to realize after I got Shogun 2, because Shogun 2 was a good game when it came out. The avatar system was really nice, but at the same time it was kind of different and I didn't like it as much. But with Attila, I've kind of gotten used to just playing single player. Like sometimes you'll get like one game like in a week. I think this is my first one on this new laptop, but it'll probably, yeah. Like it's hard to get games. It's so ridiculous. And then if you get one, it's a city assault, and like it just becomes to the point where you don't look for multiplayer games. You just stick to single player, and that's it. Because let's be honest, like no Total War game, with the exception of maybe Shogun 2, has any multiplayer replayability. It's not like they update the game consistently, and that's kind of why the avatar system works, because once the game does die off, then there's always going to be that avatar system. It's not like they take away the avatar system. With Age of Charlemagne, it doesn't matter. You can replay the game, although it does get more and more stagnant quicker than the base game because there's less factions and therefore less units. But it's just, if you want to enjoy the experience of the units according to how they operated in history, or maybe if you want to rewrite it, I don't know. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's why I like Age of Charlemagne. It is more balanced than the base game. Is it better than the base game? Depends. I don't think it is, but it's pretty close. I think that Age of Charlemagne could have been a standalone, but I do also think that even though it isn't, it's still a DLC. So it's supposed to complement the base game in some way, or like give you an edge, kind of like how Rome 2 was. But then of course Rome 2 got more changes because Creative Assembly really messed up with Rome 2. Well, technically, maybe it was Sega that messed up with Rome 2. I don't know. I don't know if it's the publisher, the developer. Doesn't matter to me. It messed up. So that's pretty much it. Age of Charlemagne, good. Attila, good. I will have to make a dedicated video to Age of Charlemagne. I think people have done reviews. Let me just quickly check. I don't remember ever looking up an Age of Charlemagne review. Like, Arch Warhammer did one. I know that much. But like I've never like watched anybody else do one. I think Total Warzone did one as well. But I don't even watch the guy anymore. It just sucks how like literally 3 months after Age of Charlemagne comes out, the Slavs came out, and then the game just died after that because the Slavs were completely overpowered. Well, actually, they weren't overpowered, but they were game breaking. I think that's what I said when I was reviewing them. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully, I'll see you guys in my next stream or video. Bye, guys.